guys, Chad Walquist here from I Am the Best I Can. Today I am working on a wheel stud in my front passenger tire or wheel, and it got stripped out and I went to a mechanic. I won't say which mechanic because I'm not here to try to tear anybody down, but I will tell you it was a name brand mechanic that's in probably every city in town. And they told me they were going to charge me $140 to replace a wheel stud. So I called Napa, and it's $1.99 for a wheel stud. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and save myself 138 bucks and just do this myself. So I paid the $2 for the wheel stud, and I got in the middle of this job, and I thought I should probably make a video. So all I've done so far, I jacked the front of the car up, got my car blocks underneath it, or my jack stands, and then I took off the wheel, and I took off the brakes. It's just on a 2004 Subaru Outback. It's just 4 bolts to take off the brakes. So the 2 coming in the back to the actual caliper, and then you take the caliper off. You can see it sitting right here on top of my wheel well. And I'll give you a more zoomed in view when we get going here. And then there's 2 more bolts on the back of the actual bracket for the caliper. So the first 2 bolts are here and here, and this sits on here like so. So I first take off these 2 bolts, then I take off these 2 bolts. These first ones are 14 millimeter, these second ones are 17 millimeter. 4 bolts. This is off, and then get a rubber mallet. I guess you could do this with a hammer, but I wouldn't recommend it. You don't want to be putting dents in your rotor. You need a nice smooth surface for your brakes. So I took my rubber mallet, gently tapped it all around, and then I can pull the rotor right off. So that's where I'm at right now. Oh, and then I took a regular hammer. It's around here somewhere. Whatever, you know what a hammer looks like. Took a regular hammer, and I just hammered this stud out. It took me, I don't know, 30 seconds, and it came right out. And I wasn't just welling on it, just, you know, gentle, consistent hits, and backed it out. And then in this hole, I got a bunch of Q-tips here, and sprayed a bunch of PB blaster, and just cleaned out the hole as best as I could. And I've got that stud sitting in the freezer. So I'm gonna go grab the stud out of the freezer. The reason I put it in the freezer is that'll make it contract just a little bit, and every little, you know, micron of space that I can save myself will make this easier to pull this stud back through. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab that stud, and then come back and I'll show you how I pull it through, and I'll give you a nice zoomed in view of that. All right, so here's my stud. Just got it out of the freezer. It's very cold right now. I'm just gonna spray it with a little bit of PB blaster. And I'm spraying my hole again here, and I'll just stick this through. All right, now I just went to the hardware store and I got some washers. I don't know, cost me 75 cents, maybe less. I'll just put those washers on there, and then I'll put on my lug nut. Now what this is going to do is I tighten this lug nut. It's going to pull this stud through, because it's not firm here yet in the back. It's not all the way flush up against the back. I've got quite a bit of clearance. Hopefully you can see that just fine. Yeah, that's just starting to pull that through. Now I can feel it on the back with my finger sucking it in, which is perfect. That's what I want. Then as this gets a little bit tighter, should go all the way here. I may even, I think we're still doing good. I just want to check the back. Look at my progress. I can see it going in. This is good. Everything's looking good. I'm just going nice and slow. Sucking that in. I've never done this before. I just want to give a quick shout out to Expert Village. They had a video on this. This is where I got the idea to freeze the stud. And they used the CV, a CV nut. I didn't have an extra one laying around, and I didn't much feel like taking mine off. So I just went to the hardware store and got these washers. And take the stud with you when you go to the hardware store. Make sure that you get the right size washers that the stud will fit around. Almost all the way through. Almost there. That's it. Now I just loosen it. I did it nice and slow. Check my threads, they're still looking really good. Pull these off, and voila. That just saved me $138. That is in there, it's nice and snug. I can see the back of it, that it's flush. I'm gonna move the camera here just so you can also see. So this is what I'm checking right here. This back side, that it's nice and flush. And let's see if I can get even a little better view. Sorry, that's about as good as I can get. But that's pretty good. Pretty good. Now, all I have to do is put it all back together. So I'll put the rotor on and get the brakes back on. And I'll go ahead and film that whole process. Since I didn't film me taking it all apart, I'll film myself putting it all back together so that you have context here and you know how to do this. When I was trying to get the rotor off, I got some oil on it on accident. I had sprayed some of the studs, and I should have sprayed after I had already taken the rotor off. So the problem I'm running into is I've got oil now on my rotor, and I don't want that. So I'm going to spray it with some brake cleaner and just wash it off. And of course, be careful not to breathe this in, and definitely don't let any of this get on your skin. Okay, that's done. Now I'm just going to put this back on. Here we go. Nice. Okay, now I need to put the brake bracket back on. And again, that's just those two 17mm screws. I got them right here. And these are actually looking pretty gunked up. So I've got a steel brush. I'm just going to clean these up real quick. That looks pretty good. Now I'm going to put some Valvoline synthetic blend grease on it. Again, that's just some high temperature grease to keep it from rusting, so that anytime in the future that I need to take off the brake bracket, like I'm going to have to do the CV axle soon, I know. And so I just want to be able to get this off. Alright, I got the first screw in. I'll just get it hand tight. Then I'll clean up the second screw, put it in. Go ahead and do the same thing here, just get this finger tight. Now the top one you can't get a ratchet on, so I went and picked up, I don't know, a couple years ago, the first time I did my brakes, so maybe 8 years ago, I don't know. Pick up a 17-inch wrench. Apparently I got this one from Ace. I don't know. It probably cost me less than $5. And you have to use this on the top one because you can't fit a socket on it. So if you have a geared wrench, or this one's not geared, but just a wrench with a nice hole in it, you're good to go. Worst case scenario, you could use a crescent wrench, but anybody who's used a crescent wrench on cars before knows that can be very frustrating, and it's a good way to start stripping your bolts. So if you have to use a crescent wrench, just be real careful. Now, I'm just going to put my brakes back on. The one with the little metal thing is the one that goes on the back side of the rotor. I don't know that it actually really matters, but I just keep it consistent. The way I find it is the way I leave it. Good time for me to inspect my brakes. They're starting to show a little wear and tear, but I still got 1/4 of an inch left on them, so they'll last me a little while longer. I got in my car and I had to put the brake on to put it in neutral, and that depressed my caliper a bunch. So now I got to go get my wrench and repress my caliper. Now I'm just going to leave mine up here while I do it. Be careful. You don't want to damage this boot around the caliper, so make sure your wrench stays on the metal and not on the boot. Ah, there it goes. Okay. There is a tool that that you can buy that'll depress your calipers. I'm just too cheap to buy it. Oh man, after that, I might consider it in the future. Okay. Now here's my bolts for the calipers. And you can see they got a little bit of grime on them. Maybe you can see that, I don't know. So I'm just going to clean these up as well. These ones are still in really good shape though, so I don't need to scrub them with the brush. Just going to wipe them down, apply a little bit of grease, and that'll be that. Got that one finger tight. Wipe down this other one. Sometimes you have to wiggle the caliper a little bit to get that screw to seat and start grabbing the threads. So if you have that problem, just wiggle the caliper till you get it, and it'll pop right in. And you'll feel it. Okay, those are both finger tight. Now I'm going to get my 14mm socket, and this one you can use the socket, or the what am I trying to say, the ratchet for both of them. And again, don't kill it, but you know, nice and snug. These are your brakes. Your life depends on them, so make sure you got them on there good. And I feel good about that. Now you can see I've got a little bit of play in mine. I can wiggle that just a little. I don't know if you can actually see that in the video or not, but that's just because I depressed the caliper a bunch. The first time I put the brakes on, they'll re-expand, no problem. Okay. That's it. At this point, all I do now is put on the tire, and I'm good to go. I'm done. So that saved me $138. Filming and trying to set up the shot and doing all this and trying to stop and explain and make sure that I said everything correctly took me a lot longer. I probably spent total an hour and a half on this, not including driving time to go get the part. So I'm just talking about actual labor time. If I had not been filming, man, there's no reason this should take more than 45 minutes. If you're really fast, if you're an experienced mechanic, probably a half hour, honestly. So anyway, don't be intimidated by this job. Gosh, the whole point of me doing these videos is that I'm just a regular guy, right? I'm not a mechanic. I'm not a professional. I was a school teacher, for crying out loud. That's my background. And now, you know, I just, to save money, I try to do all the maintenance I can on my own car. And gosh, they saved me 138 bucks. $2 for the part. Well, and 75 cents for the washers. So all told, I saved, you know, with tax, $136, 137, whatever. So I would just really encourage you guys, do this yourself. Do not let somebody rip you off. I mean, unless you just don't have the time, and then that's different. But gosh, if you can do it yourself, and then you'll build confidence, and the next time you have a problem like this, no big deal. This is literally the first time I've ever changed a stud. I didn't know what I was doing. I just got online, watched a couple videos, and I thought, I can do this. This is not that difficult. And if I can do it, I'm just regular Joe Schmo. You can do it too, I promise. Okay guys, that's it. I'm just going to throw this wheel on and I'm good to go. So see you next time. I hope this video was helpful for you. I'm Chad Walquist. I am the best I can.